The door creaked again. This time, it wasn't the wind. Aiton turned sharply toward the sound. Her heart was pounding in her chest like a warning drum. Matten motioned for silence and slowly pulled Aiton behind the large bookshelf, keeping his hand on her shoulder to steady her. Footsteps echoed across the marble floor upstairs. "Who could it be?" Aiton whispered. "No idea. But whoever it is, they've been watching us," Matten murmured, eyes narrowed. The two stood still, listening. The footsteps stopped for a moment, then the sound of something or someone rummaging through papers filled the silence. Matten moved first, silently tiptoeing toward the hallway. He gestured for Aiton to stay behind. But Aiton followed. She couldn't stay hidden anymore, not after what she had just learned. Whoever was in the house might hold more answers. They climbed the staircase slowly. Each step creaked under their weight. As they neared the top, the hallway light flickered, then went out completely. Darkness swallowed them whole. Suddenly, a shadow moved at the end of the corridor. A tall figure in a black coat turned the corner and disappeared into one of the rooms. Aiton's breath caught. They reached the room, door slightly ajar. Inside was chaos. Files scattered across the floor. A drawer broken open. Whoever it was, they were searching for something. "Maybe they're looking for the will," Matten said, scanning the mess. Aiton knelt down, picking up a torn photo, her father and his best friend, the one he always called Ollie Day. "They don't want me to find the rest of this," she whispered. And just then, on the corner of the table, Aiton noticed a tiny black device blinking red. "A voice recorder," she murmured. Matten picked it up. "We need to leave. Now." But as they turned to go, the front door slammed shut below. They were locked in. That evening, Aiton sat alone in the garden behind the house. The cool Baku breeze swept through the trees, brushing against her skin like a whisper from the past. Her thoughts were racing. Everything she knew about her life had changed within hours. She remembered how her aunt and uncle treated her always cold, always distant. They never let her ask questions, never spoke of her parents with warmth. Now it all made sense. Just as the sun dipped below the horizon, she heard footsteps. Tin appeared, holding his phone tightly. "Aiton, I think you need to hear this," he said. He pressed play. It was a voice recording. Her aunt's voice echoed through the speaker, speaking sharply to someone. "She's getting too close to the truth. If she finds that will, we're done. We need her out of the house," distracted, silenced. Aiton's breath caught in her throat. There was no longer any doubt. Her aunt and uncle had planned everything. They'd hidden her inheritance, controlled her life, and now they wanted her gone. But they had made one mistake. They underestimated her. Aiton stood up, her eyes steady with fire. "They took everything from me. My parents, my future. But now it's my turn." Matten gave her a nod. "We'll do this together." Together, they would uncover every secret and expose every lie. And Aiton would no longer be the quiet girl in the shadows. She would rise. The city of Baku shimmered in the distance as Aiton stood on the balcony of the villa. The weight of the documents in her hands was nothing compared to the fire that now burned inside her. The truth had finally found light. Matten leaned against the railing beside her. "They'll come after you now," he said quietly. Aiton didn't flinch. "Let them try." She made her first call to her family's former lawyer, the only one she trusted. Within hours, he arrived with a stack of files and an even heavier silence. "You were never supposed to see these," he said, spreading out contracts forged in her name. "Your aunt and uncle redirected everything after your parents' deaths. The car accident. I've always suspected it wasn't just an accident." Aiton's hands trembled, not with fear, but anger. "They built their empire on my father's name. And my silence." "Not anymore," Matten added, his voice firm. Later that evening, Aiton stood before a mirror, dressed not in grief, but in determination. She pinned her hair up, slipped on her heels, and stepped into the role she was always meant to play. The next morning, she arrived unannounced at her father's company headquarters. Security hesitated until she showed them the original ownership documents. Gasps echoed through the lobby as the employees whispered her name. In the boardroom, her uncle Ralph sat at the head of the table until she walked in. "What is this?" he demanded. Aiton laid the documents on the table. "This is the truth. And this," she looked him in the eye. "This is me taking my seat." A storm was brewing in Baku, and Aiton was its eye. Aiton's heels echoed powerfully through the marble halls of the corporate tower. Every step she took felt like a reclaiming of her father's legacy. Inside the boardroom, the atmosphere was thick. Her uncle Ralph stared at her with disbelief, flanked by her Aunt Sevda and their daughter Lala. The very people who once fed her with false affection now looked at her like a threat. "You have no right to barge in here like this," Ralph growled. "I have every right," Aiton replied, her voice calm but icy. "And the documents prove it." The lawyer slid copies of ownership records across the table. All forged signatures, lies woven into her childhood, now stripped bare under corporate lighting. "You think you can run this empire?" Lala snapped, bitterness in her voice. Aiton turned to her cousin slowly. "No, I know I can. Because I'm not the one who stole to get here." Lala's fists clenched. But her mother, Sevda, stepped in. "You don't understand the burden of keeping things together after your parents died," she said, feigning sympathy. "My parents didn't die," Aiton interrupted sharply. "They were killed, and you helped cover it up." Silence fell like thunder. Matten entered the room then, placing a flash drive on the table. "That's the audio recording," he said. "Your aunt and uncle planning how to stage the accident. You really should have checked for hidden mics." Ralph stood, rage flooding his face. "You'll ruin this family." "No," Aiton said. "You already did. I'm just pulling off the masks." She turned and walked out, leaving behind a room full of silence and shattered lies. Outside, journalists waited. Cameras flashed. Aiton stood tall. "My name is Aiton Abasova," she said into the microphones. "And I'm here to take back what was mine." The courtroom was silent. The echoes of heels on marble floors, the shuffling of papers, and the subtle tension in the air made everyone uneasy. Aiton sat beside her lawyer, her eyes locked on the figures ahead, her aunt and uncle, Duru and Vahid. Once her family, now her betrayers. The judge entered, and the trial began. Witnesses came forward. Security camera footage was shown, footage hidden in the mansion's basement, left by Aiton's late grandfather. In it, Duru and Vahid were heard planning to take control of the family fortune by removing Aiton's parents. The car accident, the fake caretaking, the forged papers, all laid bare. Then came the voice recording. It was Henker, Aiton's ex-cousin-in-law. "Get her to sign it." "I don't care how. Once everything's in our name, she's nothing. Just a girl with a pretty face and no power." Gasps filled the room. Aiton closed her eyes for a moment. Her heart was breaking, but she stayed strong. Matten sat in the front row, his gaze never leaving Aiton. He had promised her he'd stand by her side, and he did. After hours of evidence, the judge made his final statement. "With the presented evidence, I hereby declare Duru and Vahid guilty of conspiracy, attempted fraud, and endangering a minor. They are to be taken into custody immediately." The courtroom erupted. Aiton exhaled slowly, tears finally falling down her cheeks, not from sadness, but from relief. As the officers led Duru and Vahid away, Duru turned her head and hissed, "This isn't over." But Aiton only smiled. "For me, it just began."